Hey guys, let's talk about some solving by factoring. So the premise going into this video is that you have some ideas of factoring. If you don't know how to factor, I strongly suggest you go through my videos, through my channel, and find and watch some videos on factoring. So we're going to solve each of the following by factoring. Now, one of the most important things before we even get to the factoring part is we have to make sure these quadratic equations are equal to 0. So my first one, x squared plus 5x minus 14 equals 0. We have it equal to 0, which is what we want. That has to happen first. Now that we're equal to 0, I want to try and factor this left side. Now what I'm seeing here is I have an x squared with no number in front of it and a 5x minus 14. When there's no number in front of that x squared, I mean really it is 1. I can use a little bit of a shortcut to try and factor this. What I'm going to look for, and you would learn this if you watch my factoring videos, is I'm going to find two numbers that multiply to negative 14, but those same two numbers need to add to positive 5. So two numbers that multiply to negative 14 and add to 5. So especially for beginning factors, some people could come up with those numbers in their head. I like to list out to the side all pairs of numbers that multiply to 14. So 1 times 14 would get me 14, 2 times 7, and I don't think I'm going to find anything else. So I want to figure out, and I could use pluses or minuses on both, whatever, what pair of numbers would get me positive 5, but they also need to multiply to negative 14. So I'm looking at 2 and 7, and I'm thinking that's going to get me to 5. And how we write our factors again is I'm going to have two sets. We're still equal to 0. I'm going to have x and x leading off, and I'm going to put my numbers right there. So I'm thinking 2 and 7. To get 5, I'm going to need a positive 7, so I'm going to put a plus 7, and a negative 2, which would be minus 2, because 7 times negative 2 is negative 14. 7 minus 2 is 5, so it works out. So when we're solving by factoring, we have this thing called the zero product property, which says when we have two pieces, like this parentheses and that parentheses multiplied together equal to 0, that means either this first piece, x plus 7, is equal to 0, or the second piece, x minus 2, is equal to 0. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and solve each of these individually. So the left one, I'm going to subtract 7 from both sides, and I'm going to find x equals negative 7. So there's one of my solutions. And then solving the right one, I add 2, and I'm going to get x equals 2. So what this means when we're solving solutions, if I would have taken this negative 7 and plugged it in for both x on this left side and simplify, I'm going to get 0 equals 0. If I take 2 and plug it in to both my x's on the left side, I would also end up with 0 equals 0. So next what I'm going to do is this next example, so a little bit more complex. So I have 3x squared minus 30x equals negative 63. Now remember, we have to have the right side equal 0, or it doesn't even matter if it's right or left. We just want this thing equal to 0, so either a 0 on the left or a 0 on the right. So to get rid of a minus 63, I'm going to add 63 to both sides. And that's going to give me 3x squared. These are not like terms. This negative 30x, that has an x. This 63 does not have an x. They're not like terms, so minus 30x plus 63 is equal to 0. Now this setup is a little bit different from the first one. We can't use the shortcut yet because I have this number in front of the x squared. Now one thing I do notice here that is helpful is if you look at this, 3, 30, 63, all of these numbers can be divided by 3. So here's what I'm going to do. If I can, I'm going to divide all of these by 3 on the left side. But if I do it to one side, I got to do it to the other. I'm going to divide the right side by 3. Now here's what happens that works out. 3x squared divided by 3 is just going to be plain old x squared. Negative 30 divided by 3 is going to be negative 10x. And then 63 divided by 3 is going to be 21. And on the right side, 0 divided by 3 is 0. And just like that, I noticed that those pieces are working that way. I've gone from having this 3 in front of my x squared to having no 3 in front of it. And this is going to factor just like what we did up above on this piece of paper. So we can do the shortcut. I'm going to look for two numbers that multiply to 21. Those same two numbers need to add to negative 10. So again, it's very useful to try and make a list there. So numbers that multiply to 21. So 1 and 21, 3 and 7. So then I just have to think what pairs of numbers would multiply to positive 21, but then add to negative 10. So what pairs of numbers multiply to 21, but add to negative 10? So those numbers are going to be 3 and 7. Now, if I'm going to get 3 and 7 to add up to negative 10, I'm going to use negative 3 and negative 7. Because negative 3, negative 7, that's going to add to negative 10. Negative 3 times negative 7 is positive 21. So I have it factored out. And again, once we're done factoring, set each factor equal to 0 and solve. X minus 3 is equal to 0 and x minus 7 is equal to 0. Add 3, add 3. Solve the other one. Add 7, add 7. So I'm going to get x equals 3, x equals 7. And that was my first of two videos on solving by factoring.